Game development is so goddamn hard. Like, did you know that out of all the jobs in the world, mine is by far the hardest? Half the time I actually don't know what I'm doing, and the other half the time I think I know what I'm doing, only to find out 2 months later that it was the dumbest possible thing I could have done. And I'm really trying to put my best foot forward with this game, but every time I do, my worst foot takes about 2 steps back. But, as you can tell by the smile on my face, in the last like 8 months I've made some insane progress. I've worked on everything from the gameplay loop to the mechanics, progression, level design. I went on 2 researching holidays, I've had people finally playtest the game, I've had my midlife crisis like 20 years early, it's crazy, I'm going crazy. And lucky for me, I failed so many times recently that I actually ran out of things to fail, so it can only be up from here. I'm not kidding when I say pretty much anyone can make a game, because if you look at the definition, the bar is so low that it's basically inside the ground. So, what is a good game? You know, maybe it's fun, there's a lot to do, it looks good, maybe it's addictive or has a good story. Most Steam users would actually just say anything with a naked woman, so it all depends. Unfortunately, the previous version of my game didn't fit into any of these categories no matter how hard I tried. And just so you understand how far I've come, here's what the game is supposed to be about. Vermin is a survival horror hunting game where your main goal is to collect animals for your big radioactive heart to gain mutations which unlock new areas. There's inventory management, self-defense, looting, stealth, animal abuse, it's got a story, and you gotta keep radiation in your blood, otherwise the beast will hunt you. And trust me, it sounded so good on paper, but after listening to the paper for a while, I couldn't help but notice that there isn't even a proper gameplay loop. It's like a gameplay tetrahedron, this shit is so confusing to play. Which became very evident when I gave it to my friend to try. He walked face first into a tree because it was so dark, he asked me where to go, then he accidentally opened his inventory and proceeded to clip out of the level. And just like my friend in the game, I was completely blind to all these problems. So over the next month, I decided to add some flies, I changed the visuals, I added a dog stuck in a bear trap that barks at you, changed the visuals, added birds that fly away when you go near them, I made a trader with whom you can exchange animals for items, I changed the visuals, I made the Geiger counter be recharged at wind turbines, I changed the visuals, I added a crafting system and like 16 other things. And at this point, I probably should have realized that, you know, this isn't going anywhere, but instead, I changed the visual. Instead, I decided I want to improve the sound design, so I downloaded an audio engine for my game, and then to get some sounds, I got myself a sound library subscription for the next 1,000 years. Then I noticed that the game wasn't running well, so I worked hard for a week trying to improve it, but I didn't make any progress, so I just decided to work smart instead, and I cut the resolution in half. It now runs at 300 FPS and it looks the same. And this is when I stopped, looked around, and realized I was just putting lipstick on a pig. But boy did I make an attractive pig. So now it's finally time to give the game some structure, which means I gotta actually focus on the game design, which is something I'm very bad at, but the only thing I quit is quitting, and this word is pronounced as impossible. First of all, the game is built around feeding animals to the heart, but what if the player has no bullets? Or what if he does have them and his aim chronically sucks ass? And so far my answer to that has been So the fix I came up with are traps, which I can't even believe weren't in my hunting game. So I sat down to test, and I was pretty excited to go set them and check on them, but it also felt really unrewarding when I put a trap down and within 30 seconds a deer was already in it. Like, bro, you watched me put it there. So there's an issue here, because traps should catch things over time, but like, when is time? Surely not every 30 seconds to see if some clapped deer decided to turn his mental disability into a physical one, right? So, my first invention was a day and night cycle. And I know what you're thinking. Wishbone, that's very original, but how does this help? Well, basically, the player has a routine to follow now. They'll set their traps during the day and check what they've caught the next morning. And after testing this out, for some reason I was straight up getting anxious, like I damn near started hyperventilating. And that's when it dawned on me that I just doubled the issue and gave it to the next person, because now we have 2 timers to worry about. Your blood radiation and the time of day, both of which have absolutely nothing to do with each other. So I took a shower, realized I forgot to brainstorm and went back in, and that's when I came up with my very crackhead solution. I tied the time of day to your blood radiation level. Now, hear me out. Your radiation naturally drops throughout the day, which progresses the day, eventually turning into night, which is a very fancy way of saying that time passes. As time passes, and the only way to recharge your blood is to sleep. This creates a routine with the added benefit of the blood system where taking any damage or bleeding causes the day to go by faster. But right now you can straight up just go comatose the moment you feel in danger and wake up on a nice safe morning. So I made a blood quota system where you gotta give the heart a certain amount of blood from animals before you can go to sleep at night. Which is so fire because it actually forces you to, you know, hunt in the hunting game. And if hunting in a hunting game sounds good to you, then boy do I have a wishlist button to show you. Now the inventory used to look like not an inventory, and it's kinda like the most important thing in a survival horror game. I've never actually modeled a bag before, but I really thought I had this in the bag. Then I realized I actually don't have this in the bag when I made a big ass sphere with wrinkles looking like your grandma's ball sack, so I gave up and I kicked the sack. Which really hurt your grandma. And then I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and according to my watch, I slept 3 kilometers, and I got right to modeling a new one. This time, I made sure to switch out my old reference images because I think they'll help me model a better bag. And since the last model had no corners, I guess I subconsciously tried to overcompensate because this time, I made a fucking block. And I can't lie, at this point I was ready to give up and go back to the levitating black square because I can't sculpt wrinkles to save my life. So, with my head hanging in shame, I brought it into Substance Painter, and there it was. The magical texture which made it look like I put in 40 hours of painstaking sculpting work in 2 clicks. I mean in 40 hours of painstaking sculpt. Then I made a hand pose for holding it, I set up the gauge to show your blood radiation, and I textured and modeled every single item in the game, except for the frog. All of which I tried to make as accurate to 1980s Ukraine as possible, and I'm so proud, just not of this one, don't mention the bandage. Then I added some feedback for hovering, you can reorganize things, and you can craft here too, which works exactly like real life. Now, don't be fooled, this process took me forever. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but every time I make something, I love it for exactly 12.5 minutes, and then all of a sudden, I decide it's the worst thing I've ever made in my entire life. Now, usually that's an easy fix, such as changing the hue an imperceptible amount, but then I come back to it later, and the cycle repeats. So I'm considering pulling my eyes out to fix the issue. If you haven't pulled your eyes out yet, you may have noticed that there's UI in the game now, and I was very against this move, probably because I have no experience in graphic design. Actually, that's a lie, I do, I've just never made anything that looks good, but I've tried a bunch of different ways of displaying information, and my methods were so convoluted that they would only help you if you already knew the information. For example, I had some crafting recipes on a sheet of paper in the old inventory, and to me, it was extremely clear. Not because it was actually clear, I don't know what kind of cryptic ass hieroglyphics that shit had on it. Instead, I remembered what I was trying to do when I drew the texture. So instead of chemical plus cloth equals medkit, my girlfriend straight up said olive oil plus toilet paper equals brick. And while that may be true in real life, that's why I knew something had to change. And it might sound like I'm pouring you a tall glass of who gives a fuck, but learning that I need to provide clear information has genuinely changed me as a person. But I'm not using UI everywhere, for example, placeholder alarm. This book is where your mutations are, which are kinda like Metroidvania abilities which help you explore new areas of the world. And I made these bitches be unlocked by feeding the heart a certain combination of animals. This gives the player smaller goals to strive for, such as I need to catch 3 rabbits today, or I should set a fox trap, which really feels satisfying and gives the game an actual progression system. For obstacles, I've been doing a bunch of prototypes, such as a group of flies which will follow your head if you walk through them, muffling your hearing and distorting your vision. I actually took these from real life because every time I go to the park to enjoy the scenery, I get a group of these motherfuckers halfway down my esophagus like it's nobody's business. After which they have the audacity to follow me home unless I straight up run away from them, which gets me a lot of weird looks because they're absolutely invisible from a distance. Then I have these birds which are beautiful cubes for now, and they fly away if you either get too close or if you make noise near them. These are awesome too because not only do they make noise and attract creatures, but they also scare the ever-living shit out of you, because you're somehow never ready for a bird to catapult itself through a thick bush at Mach 5. Then I have these eggs or something, I'm not really sure what to call them, and to be honest, I shamelessly ripped this idea out of Darkwood, but it's for a good reason. These are by far the best obstacle I added because it forces the player to actually look where they step, which is very accurate to a real forest. And the best part of them is, as soon as something chases you, they get uninstalled from your memory, and next thing you know, you've gone from predicament to emergency. Now, if I waste another day making a creature model that doesn't end up staying in the game, I'm gonna have a stroke. Actually, the only thing that even survived all these changes is the Carcass Eater, which is great because I really don't want to throw that model out. Also, the Nutsack Bat, and obviously the Beast, which I still have yet to model. My favorite creature I've added recently is this humanoid thing, which doesn't have a model yet, and I don't want to spoil the lore, but basically they have both hearing and vision. They're hard to avoid, so your best option is to not be loud, but as you know, that's kinda hard to do in this game. And if you don't like sneaking around, you can also just make Broski lay down forever with a shotgun shell. Now, unfortunately, I've had to remove the snail for now because since time is tied to your blood, gaining blood would now cause you to time travel backwards, so I'm just gonna leave that out for now. I also played around with this spider here, which is super fast and basically impossible to avoid, which upon testing put me into this fight or flight situation, and I don't know how to fly, so I tried to fight and I somehow missed. And that's when I knew this had to go in the game. And now it's time for my yearly visit to my grandparents in Eastern Europe, because even I need to relax sometimes. Anyway, I literally filled up my phone with reference photos and I just couldn't stop thinking of the game, so I filled up a diary with ideas. And everything just spiraled. Also, my uncle invited me over to his place to show me his guns, which he does every year, and he let me explore his field where I recorded a bunch of useful sound effects. Then I went around my grandparents' place like I was some kind of dilapidation inspector, and my granny didn't understand what I was doing, so she tried sending me to take pictures of the actual nice parts of the house, but instead, these are the pictures I took. I also went around my uncle's house without his permission and mapped out every square centimeter. He's a hunter, so that's actually where I got a lot of my inspiration from, and I hope he doesn't see this because he's gonna shoot me. Now buckle your seatbelts because I think I entered some kind of manic state for the next 2 weeks. Because when I got home, I tried a fishing minigame to catch bait for your traps, which I did with real rope simulation for some reason, and it sucked. Then I copied my uncle's lake. Your guess is as good as mine. I made you be able to hunt rats around your base with an air gun, which, by the way, I modeled off the same one I played with as a kid. Don't ask why I had access to that. Also, my uncle has a thermoscope, which was genuinely sick, so I obviously copied that as well, since I thought it would help you hunt animals at night. And it was great, genuinely a very good addition, and I think I'll probably come back to it. Then I also experimented with different ways of hunting animals at night, such as having this whistle, which makes this rabbit screaming sound that I got from my 1000-year Soundly subscription. I placed these hunting spots around your property and made you be able to put a live animal in them as bait. And then you just sit there, at night, listening to nothing but crickets, whistling into the darkness, hoping to attract something that won't kill you. And this is amazing, this is like peak gameplay, but I'm gonna put this mechanic off for later because I want to make sure the game itself works before any new huge addition. Man, I'm not kidding, I went straight rabid. I even tried chickens, which you can find around the map, that you can bring home and keep in your coop, where they'll lay eggs each morning, which can be used as a currency with the trader. Then I tried making herbivore bait, which you can put around the forest in these troughs to attract animals, and a garden where you can grow these herbs. And then the voices in my head started arguing with the other voices, and eventually I was told to make the game work first, and then add random shit later. Though they also told me that I'm almost at 100 million subscribers and I'd like to get there by tomorrow, so please consider subscribing. Look, I promise I won't be spamming your feed anytime soon. Like, if you see my new video pop up, it's basically just a reminder of your mortality and how much time has passed, so call your loved ones after watching my video. Now, traps were super hard to get right because once again I made something that has no rules, no explanation, no feedback, and no mechanical depth, which is pretty fun to use in a very specific situation. So now I need to force the player into said situations. My first idea was areas for animals, which are the only places you can catch them. And to signal it to the player, I made these signs which told you what animal was usually nearby so you can set your traps up near it. But like, who the hell went around a radioactive forest painting pictures of the local wildlife? So my next idea was the opposite, and since I was currently in my phasmophobia era, I thought it might be cool to have to look for evidence of animals, which absolutely did not work. Man, I modeled like 6 shit models, I made footstep textures and burrows, and then I made it so that if you find some tiny rabbit poo on the floor, that means it must be a rabbit area. But hold your horses, we don't know how active the area is, so you gotta go around and count the amount of shit in the area, and based on that and the footsteps, deduce what is nearby and how many. Yep, turns out it's a lot easier to find evidence of a human-sized ghost in a clean house than to find tiny balls of Nesquik in the middle of a dense, incredibly dark forest at half resolution. I also tried traps with a chance meter, which you need to fill up with different things such as being near a burrow or being baited or putting a nice smell near them, which was turning into a simulator. Not to mention the chance bar was straight up spreading misinformation because if you fill it up, congrats, you now have like a 10% chance to catch something. So I made it into a checklist where you can check how many things you can do to get the best results from your trap, such as adding bait or putting it near a region with animals, and I considered calling these territories because of how cool it sounded until rabbit territory popped up on my screen. So I landed on this. There are animal areas such as rat holes in walls of houses, burrows in fields, and nests and other stuff, and when you go near them, they'll display what kind of animals live in them and how active the area is. This way, you have all the information that you need to actually make a decision instead of spending your entire day gathering that information. See, this was such a hard part of the game design to get right because I genuinely needed to consider what experience I wanted the player to have from this game. And my main lesson from this is that I'm not trying to simulate hunting, I'm trying to make the player feel like a hunter. Also, I'm not trying to make an idle game, so there's different things that can happen with your traps each morning, such as the bait being gone so you have to rearm it and add more bait, or it caught something you didn't want which you somehow need to deal with, or maybe you caught something and something ate it so there's just a limb in it now, which makes the whole thing feel quite exciting to check on. And man, this mousetrap design had me doing all sorts of mental gymnastics to understand. I found this cool Soviet era stamped sheet metal rat trap image, fucking hell, but I couldn't understand how it works for the life of me until I found a very informative video. But I realized I still need to make my own adjustments for gameplay purposes, so I added this bait plate with a small welded on hook which catches the retaining ring which holds the retaining bar, all set at an angle on top of a pivoting cylinder, so when the rat takes the bait, the plate will go backwards, with the hook pulling the ring off the retaining bar and letting the killing bar free. And now I have a master's degree in virtual mousetrap design, which doesn't pay me well, and I couldn't get a sponsor for this video, so I'm my own sponsor, and all I ask is that you wishlist Vermin on Steam, please. Please wishlist Vermin on Steam. Pretty much everyone refused to sponsor me. They said something about upload schedule, but I quickly reassured them that I've never heard of those words before and that there's nothing to worry about. And for some reason they never got back to me. The only brands that still want to sponsor me are bullshit AI 3D model generators who I will never promote. But some of you have been asking if there's any other way to support me besides wishlisting Vermin on Steam. So I decided to open a Patreon, but before you go there, I gotta tell you that I'm really busy and I literally have nothing to offer you in return. I'll occasionally post screenshots of Vermin, talk about how I designed something or whatever you guys ask me, and the best part is, I'll provide you with a monthly foot pick. I mean, it's exactly what you guys have been asking for. Now, I feel extremely uncomfortable taking money from you guys, so I've made the subscription the minimum that Patreon lets me. So think of this as testing the waters, maybe I'll do it only for a few months, or maybe you guys like it and I'll start doing more things over there, so we'll see. And sponsors, if you're watching this, I'm desperate for your money. Also, ignore the next part, you guys passed my test. You fell right into my trap. I know you tried to skip this segment, so go back and watch it. I'll be waiting. Man, I got sidetracked so hard. I meant to tell you that some traps, especially for carnivores, will require some bait to work. So I made this butcher table where you can take animals you've caught and cut them up. I had this idea to make it a text interface where you can read in disgusting detail exactly what you're doing to these animals. And to make it even worse, I made it so you have a limited amount of cuts, each giving you more bait but costs some time from your day, and the animal is usually alive when you put it onto the table. So you have a choice at the start to cut its throat and let it bleed out, spending a precious cut. Or to keep it alive as you butcher it. For it, I modeled this scale that the bait goes on, and obviously I had to make my Eastern European grandma proud with this tablecloth. So you can now take the bait and put it into your traps, but how are you gonna find your traps? Well, not with your eyes because it's pitch fucking black. Now, to my credit, I knew about this issue, so I added a flashlight a while back. But it has a battery, which means you can't always use it. Visuals are like the peak of my perfectionism. In the last like 2 years, I think I've changed them at least once a week, like literally. Even since April, I had this, which looked quite good, but it was super hard to see. And I don't know why, but I guess I decided I need to make it even harder to see, so I changed them again. I then went for the super crunchy look, which I thought looked terrible, but I made some nice day and night cycle visuals to go along with it. But this shit was darker than Vanta Black. It was like a black hole. The only thing I saw while playing was my own reflection in the monitor. It looked like under the bed. Like this bitch looked like it had no bright ideas. Like, I actually don't know what I was thinking, and then I had the audacity to get offended when my friend called it dark, so out of revenge, I called him dark, and now all of a sudden I'm a racist or something. I also tried a style where I intentionally made it super dark. I mean, I didn't have to try very hard, mind you. I think to reach the super dark status, I actually had to make it brighter. And then I lit the game with these bioluminescent mushrooms, which looked okay, but now I'd have to put mushrooms everywhere, and it kinda killed the vibe. You might be wondering where the lighting from your body went, and I had to get rid of it because turns out in my infinite wisdom, I lit the one part of your screen that you didn't care about, which made it super hard to see all the parts that you did care about. I also found that the visuals are super cluttered because of all the vegetation textures. Now, just to put this into context, my favorite parts of the visuals were always the silhouettes, and I always thought, man, if it could only just always look like this. Guess what? Nothing's stopping me, so I turned any object that is not important to gameplay or immersion into silhouettes. Now, I think with the amount of money I poured into this stuff over the years, I actually had a sunk cost fallacy moment, but instead of the devil sitting on my shoulder, I had a dumbass whispering in my ear, and it worked because just before committing to the changes, I bought another tree pack for some reason. I promise though that this was my last purchase. Fine, I lied. I also got some grass that I never ended up using. I'm human. Anyway, I changed the fog a bit to convey more depth, and hippity hoppity, it became super easy to see, uppity, all while keeping the mood of the game. And I quite like this look, but knowing me, I'll hate it right after I finish editing this video, so I shit you not, I tend to work on the game with it looking like this to make sure I don't get distracted. Now this style is huge because I can also save a lot of time texturing, because all I need to do is make a black model for most large obstacles, which finally means I can make my own trees and logs and stuff. The issue with using assets, especially ones from photo scans, is that what I have is kind of all I've got to work with. Unless I go out with all my non-existent photo scanning gear to the exact location and weather conditions where the originals were taken. And I'm not kidding, I genuinely stand by this aesthetic. I really like it. My previous work, I'd probably, sit by it at a distance or like plank near it, but this, I'm gonna stand by. But there's a problem. Is it just me or is this looking hella blurry? And it's not just my eye damage from staring at a screen too much. It made me sad because I really thought I'd have to increase the resolution to sharpen the image. It's beyond me how I didn't think of a sharpening effect, and now it looks exactly how I wanted the game to look, and I love it so much. Along with the visuals, I also tried to add a map earlier where my idea is that it's basically just an outline of the area and you can draw in your own landmarks and things you find interesting. And as much as I enjoyed it, I also didn't enjoy it because there's information that the player needs to be able to play the game. So I can't just rely on the player to make sure that the game stays playable. I also had no idea how to make this feature performance friendly because drawing would absolutely tank my FPS, which is totally not my fault because I'm I'm doing computer science and I'm very good at college. So getting rid of this is just a win-win. I'm gonna have to set off the placeholder alarms because this one's looking a bit rough. The map now displays icons for traps you've placed, along with points of interest like trapping spots and buildings. You can pan around the map to look around, and each morning every trap that you need to check will be circled to help you actually keep track of what's going on. And then they'll be automatically X'd out once you check them. I also added a total trap tally to the top right, alliteration is my passion, and this is so you can easily see how many traps you've checked. And to be honest, I still hate this map, it sucks so hard, so I'll be back. I also split the world of the game into specific parts, because before there was just a barn with your heart in it, but when I made it, you could tell that my heart wasn't in it since there was nothing else to do at your base. So everything you need like the heart, butcher table, storage room, trader, workbench are in something called the base, which is basically in the middle of this field. And then from the field, you can access the areas of the game like the forest, apartments, and flooded highways, which all helps give the player a place to make plans and prepare for an excursion. Now, with a game project this big, I've been doing something I like to call debullshitification, which is basically the process of changing all the ass code I wrote at the start, which is a lot of stuff, and it's so violently uninteresting that I can't even remember what I did. To reassure myself that I am in fact improving, I had the same friend over for a third time to try it. And that's not because my other friends don't want to try the game or anything, I mean, they all seem pretty interested.
Who the fuck are you? Leave me alone! Why the fuck are you barefoot, you freak?
But it's because my friend already knows a lot about the game. Anyway, it was a painful experience that I will never talk about, only to my therapist. So I set my mind on making a tutorial because I can't just throw a poor playtester into the middle of a game and expect any result that's not them immediately getting lost. And after some testing, I realized that the placeholder graphics just weren't cutting it because my girlfriend got stuck at this point. Go to the book near the bed. Now to me this was quite obvious that the nondescript grey cube next to the smaller nondescript grey cube were the bed and the book respectively, and I can't really understand the confusion. But sometimes I just need to let go of my ego and listen to the playtesters. So I gotta make some assets for the environment, which I'm planning to not finish fully, since I'm thinking as long as the player can tell a book from a bed, it's good enough for now. And would you look at that, I'm going back to my grandparents for the second time this summer. So I took a bunch more pictures, I found a hedgehog, then another hedgehog, and the next day I found a rabbit, then we saw some deer, then I found a crispy frog, I caught a fish, bro. I was out there discovering the entire ecosystem. I was basically a Disney princess out there. Then one morning my granny made me a goated breakfast and I stole her bike again. This year she had a different one because I absolutely bricked the one from last year, which I still feel bad about because she's had that one for like 20 years. And to be honest, I didn't treat this one much better, like I could feel that thing falling apart as I rode it. I went to the forest where I took a walk and something was there, and I genuinely froze like a deer with head lice, because all I could hear was walking and occasionally I would see a streak of movement in the bush next to me. So to protect myself, I immediately started recording because I'm sure it would not be good for the animal's public image if it attacked me, and thankfully that worked. I genuinely don't know what people think of me when I'm taking pictures like this, but at least I'm not letting them stop me. I began working on the main house, and since this is set in Ukraine, I looked up some pictures of houses from there and I found a few that were very similar vibes to what I was looking for. And after a bunch of modeling, and even without the texture, I think it already looks great. I made this hole in the wall where the veins of the heart grew out, and then obviously we need that 80s wallpaper that everyone's grandmother has. And I actually copied the floor texture that my grandparents use in their house, which looks quite good and gives me a lot of nostalgia. For the heart, I've been using this free model I found on the internet for like 2 years now, and to be honest, I don't even know if I have the legal rights to use it, so it's very much time to make my own one. The reason I've been putting it off is because it's like the main part of my game and I was terrified it won't turn out well. But it's time. So I made the most disgusting mood board. This is the unmood board. This is the bad mood board. I can't even look at it. I then did the thing that I was most scared to do, animate the heart. And it turned out so ridiculously good that I can't even believe that I made this. There's a lot of lore here that I won't get into, but here's the container for the daily blood quota, which I made to look like it was cut out of an old barrel. Then the bed where you plug yourself into the heart and recharge on radiation during the night, and this thing which is supposed to be a vein that you feed the creatures to, but I don't even know if I can show this. So I textured it, which didn't help my case much. It also stands up when it sees something it likes. Look, I added teeth. I made a cock with teeth. And as per usual, I had my mini crisis with the heart visuals, but it looks so good on the game's Steam page, so I don't regret anything. At around this time, I noticed that it's so annoying to wait until night when you just want to be able to sleep and you've already collected the blood for the day. And what have we learned? That's right, your blood radiation impacts the time of day. So I'm not sure if I can show this on YouTube, but the character will take out a knife and his wrist. So I had to look for a knife to add to the game, and I found this was very widely used. And I actually have one of these. Don't ask me why, but I think it would be pretty cool to include in the game. And it was so refreshing to be able to model something that I can actually hold and look at. I promise to try this method going forward when I make the dead bodies in the forest. And as you hold down the button, I'm posting this on my Patreon. I'm gonna get demonetized. Then the storage room. Oh shit, I forgot to tell you about this. So I made a storage room like ages ago because every survival horror game needs a place to store stuff. And this storage room is room for storage. Now, in most survival horror games, this is handled by a goddamn ender chest, but since I'm going for minimal UI in my game, I want to have you physically place items along the walls, and it works quite well. So that's how I got here when I decided it's time to make an actual model for it. Now, thankfully, on my holiday, I went out behind my grandparents' house and I took loads of pictures of this room, which is gonna be a really good reference for me. So I modeled it all out, and I learned that these walls are actually made super cheap by slotting slabs in on top of each other. Then I tried to replicate the floor texture that my grandparents use because it also gives me a lot of nostalgia. I actually don't think I've seen a floor texture like this anywhere else. And I replaced the pegs on the walls with these decals, which make it much easier to see. This is also when I modeled the workbench, and the way it works is that you'll have a Soviet-era hunting magazine that you can flip through, please use your imagination, and on each page there will be a different trap or upgrade which you can craft from the materials that you find around the world. As a kid, I was really into these magazines, don't ask me why, and this is also why you may have noticed that the backpack has a lot more space on it than the 3 that I originally planned to have, which is because you can craft new inventory slots throughout the game, giving you a maximum of 9. I also added an outline to hovered items and a glow effect to be able to see them in the dark, which makes the game feel really polished for some reason. I also made this indicator when you pick something up to show you how your backpack is filling up, and an option to cycle through and equip an item without opening the inventory. But this is not actually broken because you don't really know what you're taking out, so this will incentivize the player to organize their inventory and learn where everything is. Otherwise, it's kinda like reaching into a bag and seeing what you pull out. The traps in the game had this bar for the longest time where they would take time out of your day to arm, but I recently noticed that I'm literally punishing the player for setting traps. Like, how is this supposed to help the gameplay? It already takes time to walk to a spot to put your trap, and even though I thought this was a cool feature, one of the most important things I've learned recently is that I need to know when to cut something out to better the game, and this is definitely one of them. Also, you might be wondering how you're supposed to always meet your blood quota for the day, and my answer was, I'll figure it out later. Later is now, so let me show you. I made these things called blood mushrooms which grow from certain parts of the map, but only during the night. So if you don't collect enough creatures during the day, it's fine, don't panic, you can just go out there. You can actually discover these areas yourself while exploring, and they'll get marked on your shit-ass map so that you'll know where to go. But they spawn randomly across all areas, so you might have to check a few of them before finding one. And this is a great little part of the gameplay, and it makes such a huge difference. But the next issue I had was now the player can easily just hoard these things and get through the next few days instantly. So my solution is that they'll spoil very fast after being picked, and they'll not survive the night. Speaking of not surviving the night, I have a bone to pick with horror games. Death in horror games sucks. I don't think I've played a horror game where I thought the death was anything but ass, and there's a few routes I can go. I could have chosen checkpoints which feel really artificial and kill any immersion right away. I could threaten the player with a loss of progress, which sucks major ass, even my beloved Amnesia the Bunker does this, and on the surface it seems like a good idea. It makes every moment tense, but at the same time, if you die, you just want to leave the game. Like, I can't be bothered to redo all that. And thankfully, past Wishbone actually thought of this and planned the lore of the game around it. Basically, the player character's lost everything, and his main goal is to die. But the heart keeps birthing him back into the world, and he's trying to break the cycle. Which means death won't make you lose any progress, you'll just be born again the next morning. Now, this is where the tension of a horror game usually dies, but I did a lot of thinking and I made it so that you spawn back without your backpack, which has your shotgun, bolt cutters, items, radiation gauge, and everything else. So you're lit by nothing but the radioactive blood in your body, and you must retrieve your backpack with no way of defending yourself. You can't even pick up items during this time or anything, so you're literally defenseless. And guys, the game is really coming together. Kinda like me and your mom. I can actually play it, there are goals to work towards, obstacles in your way, and a loop for which I can actually give an elevator pitch. And I've learned so much over the past few months. I think I needed this time to actually mature as a developer because it's a lot harder to make games and devlogs than you'd think. A lot of the time, I found myself making decisions for the game based on what I think would look cool in a thumbnail or based on what I thought you guys wanted to see, which is so backwards. At that point, I wasn't even a game dev with a YouTube channel anymore, I was a YouTuber with a game. And I'm not kidding when I say that since the last devlog, I've had multiple moments where I genuinely wanted to release this half finished for free on itch.io because I was so embarrassed by it. But now I'm really proud, and I'm even more proud of everything I've learned, and with your help on the playtest, it's only going to get better. Which I know I mentioned like 8 months ago, but I'm actually getting close to being able to do. Famous last words. So if you want to help me shape the game, then consider joining my Discord. Game development is not a sprint, it's a marathon, where both of your legs have been amputated, you're blindfolded, and the gun that they used to start the race was pointed at your stomach. But thankfully, unlike all the other racists, I seem to be surviving so far, and I feel more on track than ever. But if there's one thing I know, it's that I don't know anything, and I'm definitely going to continue making mistakes, and that's fine with me. So as always, stay tuned for my yearly devlog, wishlist Vermin and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Alright, see you later, Escalator.